Results of the latest Franklin and Marshall College poll were just released this morning. Take a look. Of the Pennsylvanians polled, 46% said they'd vote for Vice President Kamala Harris, 43% would vote for former President Donald Trump, 6% for independent candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. Now, the last F&M presidential poll, that was back in April when President Biden, of course, was still running. And at that time, he was leading Trump by 2 points, 42 to 40. Joining us now to talk about all this, Burwood Yost from F&M. Thank you so much for being here. Always good to have you.
Thanks.
So it seems here in Pennsylvania, we're seeing what we're seeing in some other battleground states, which is Kamala Harris slightly gaining on where President Biden was a couple months ago.
Absolutely. And I think primarily because the Democrats have kind of organized themselves behind her. She's attracted more Democrats, more liberals, more young voters, more college-educated voters. All those components of the Democratic base that supported President Biden in 2020 and had kind of left him, they've come back. Yeah. And that's propelled her to the lead. Although, as you saw, President Trump's numbers have gone up a little bit too. And that's largely because the number of people looking at third-party candidates or undecided has shrunk. It's about half what it was in April.
Do we have any kind of feeling here, Robert Kennedy Jr., who he's helping, who he's hurting?
Yeah, it looks at this point like he might be hurting Trump a little more than Harris, but actually he's really faded. His campaign is kind of stalled, and I think that the third-party candidates are going to play a much smaller role than they did earlier in this race, in part because fewer people dislike the two candidates at the top of the ticket. In April, it was about 20% of voters didn't like Biden or Trump. That number is about 8% today. And so that means fewer people are looking for an alternative.
It has been an incredible month to 6 weeks in this presidential race. I mean, first, obviously, we had the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. He got a little bit of bump from that. And then, of course, right after that was the Republican National Convention. We're now seeing, of course, after a major change at the top of the ticket for the Democrats, we're seeing that bump for Harris. Is this maybe an early bump for her that maybe she normally would have seen after the convention?
Perhaps, but I do think part of it is just the consolidation of the base that we talked about. Lots of voters who had shied away from the top of the ticket with Biden there have come back. I think the thing we're going to look at as we go forward is what are older voters doing and what are moderate voters doing? Because her numbers among older voters are a little lower than Biden's were. He had real power there, and her numbers among moderates are about the same. So what happens there may determine what happens on November 5th.
Again, it's been so unsettled. A lot has been going on. We still have one more convention to go. Do these numbers maybe settle out a little bit in September? Is that where we really kind of look?
You know, it's hard to say because so many events have happened. Who knows what's going to happen next?
So true.
And there's a lot of spending. I mean, since President Biden dropped out of the race, the parties have spent $42 million in this state in 3 weeks on advertising. So you think all that advertising is going to have an effect. We'll see which direction it drives the race.
So obviously Pennsylvania, a major swing state for the presidential race. Another big race though here, and that is in the Senate. Let's take a look at the numbers there. Incumbent Democrat Bob Casey increased his lead over Republican Dave McCormick. He now leads 48 to 36. So Casey is up 2 points since April. McCormick is down 3 points since April. What do you make of this?
So I think this is in part a testimony to Casey's advertising strategy, because where we've seen the erosion in McCormick's support is among Republicans. People who are Trump supporters put themselves in that wing of the party. They're a little less supportive than they were in April. That's true among traditional Democrats. It's not that they're voting for Casey, it's that they're undecided. And so we'll see if McCormick can develop a message that brings them back, or if the continued pounding by Casey, particularly on the issues around, I think, China, not living in the state, that showed up in the poll, and I think that's what's hurting him right now.
For a state that tends to be really close, that's a pretty big lead for Senator Casey.
It is.
If he can hang on to that, does that help the top of the ticket? Does that help Vice President Harris?
You would think it would, and you would think it might help congressional Democrats as well. We asked something about which party that people prefer for their congressional district. Democrats have a slight lead there, about 2 points. So the dynamic of this race has changed completely, because in early July, Democrats were headed for a wipeout up and down the ticket. We're not there at this point.
Boy, it's been a wild couple months, and we'll see what happens here before November. And we'll be talking to you the entire way.
Look forward to it.
Burwood Yost from F&M, thank you very much. We appreciate it.